So welcome everybody to Sharing Sunday. That's what I'm calling it. And I have one of my good friends with me by Skype this time, and we'll start doing a little bit more of this, but I wanted Brittany to come on and talk to us because she has some really funny stories with online dating.
Yeah.
I asked her if she would share, and she said that she would, so here we are. Now, what I'd like for you guys to get out of this is what you shouldn't do and what you should do on online dating. Now, I did this way back in the day when it used to be like, I think it was AOL. I don't even know if that exists anymore, but AOL dating. And this was probably back in when I was 23, 24.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things have changed since then, quite obviously, but there are some telltale signs that are red flags, and there are some things that I really think that we should do to actually protect ourselves. So Brittany's gonna help me with that because I'll give you the old school way and she'll give you the updated millennial way.
Yes.
So I have to laugh because Brittany texted me yesterday and said, I did have a decent date, but I got to tell you how it ended. And I just laughed my butt off. And I thought, okay, here's a good sign that we do not go on date number 2. Why don't you tell us the story, what happened last?
So, I went on a date, and it was a great first date. He took me to a place where he knew the owners and the family of the business. So I felt at home, and we scheduled a second outing together. And it was a couple of days, not even, it was like the day that we were supposed to hang out on our second date. And he told me that his daughter ripped the chip off of his debit card.
Oh, and so it's your turn to pay, huh?
So
You know what I would have said? I would have said it still works as a swipe, doesn't it?
It does, right? That's what I said. But he insisted that he would go and get a temporary card from the bank and whatever. And I heard from him about an hour before we were supposed to go out, and he's like, "Oh, no can do. The bank will not give me a temporary card."
So why didn't you just take a withdrawal?
So that's what I was wondering too. Like, I gave him some other options, but it was so funny because later that evening he said he was going to Stanford to hang out with his buddies.
How is he doing that when he has no money?
Right. So he came up with this whole cockamamie story.
Red flag.
And I was like, this is like, I said, you know what? When you have it together, just let me know and we'll, maybe talk about hanging out again. I'm not hanging out with him again.
So there was another one that you called me about, and I couldn't even believe what you went through in Norwalk.
Yes. Oh my gosh, what was I doing in Norwalk? Oh my
Remember
gosh.
the parking and
Oh
he just
my gosh.
and he wouldn't even meet you, and you're like, what the
I was like, what is going on? I'm not super familiar with that area.
heck? Okay, so that's number 1.
Yeah.
When you're going out online dating, I've always said, number 1, make sure he comes to you, not your home, but someplace local to you where, number 1, you know how to get home, and number 2, you know where you are.
It's true.
So we're gonna put up some hints and tips as we're going with some slides. Number 1, to you.
That's important because I was unfamiliar with the area. He had a wider knowledge of the location than I did, but he wasn't sure what was on that street. And so he said, "Oh, just meet me, on this street." It was like called Main Street. First of all, we all know Main Street could be any number of blocks.
Right, and it could be any town. It could
any town.
Now, I want to just say that I know this town, and this is like, is it in Soho?
No, we went to, did we go to Soho? No. This was, oh my goodness, this was Stanford.
Okay.
Yeah, this was Stanford.
So if anybody knows of Stamford, Connecticut, this is the Gold Coast. This is the busiest, most transplanted New Yorker city in all of Connecticut because it's right on the border of New York. So it's super busy. I don't care what day or time. I remember I used to work there, Britt, and for me to get home, and it was really only a half an hour when there was no traffic, it could take me 2.5 hours. That's how busy it is.
Yeah.
So go ahead. So you're on Main Street in Stamford?
Main Street in Stamford, and this is like one of their literally like it's like their bar hopping street.
Right.
And I don't know, I'm not familiar with the area. I was leaving Norwalk to meet him in Stamford. That's what it was. And he's like, "Oh, just meet me on Main Street." And I was like, "Friend, where?" You know? like like where on Main Street do you want me to meet you? Oh, just anywhere. And I was like, it could be 50 blocks. I don't know Stamford. Can you give me an actual location?
It's also not very safe in Stamford because I have had one person that was put in the hospital because he was beat up for he was unconscious, and I had another person shot in Stamford at the bars. Okay, go ahead.
God, it's horrible. It was he picked a really nice spot when we got to town. But I got
the parking. Remember?
Like, the parking is horrendous in downtown Stamford. Unless you're at the mall, like there's really no real parking. Like, so I was driving around for 20 minutes, and he's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm trying to find a parking spot because you failed to give me an actual location to meet you." So I just randomly park. And he's like, "Well, where did you park?" You know, I said, "Oh, I'm in front of Sovereign Bank or wherever I was." And he's like, "Oh God." It was like a big deal for him to find me. So I shared my location not only with him, but with a girlfriend of mine because I felt like he was nuts. Because I'm like, this guy can't be, you know, running on a full deck of cards here. The fridge light is not that bright. It can't be.
So now when you finally do meet up with this guy, and I think you were on the phone with me for like a half an hour or more trying to find him, was he nice to you?
He was not the nicest. This is what really blew my mind. I'm trying to be accommodating to the fact that he did not give me a location. Okay, so he met me wherever I was parked. And his first response to me was, "Sweetie, are you okay? Did you have a bad day?"
Did I have a bad day?
And I was like, "Not until I got together with you."
Another date after that or no? Were you done?
No, I haven't seen him. I heard from him like the next day, "Hey, how are you?" Like it was very short, and I haven't heard from him since.
You're like, no, that's good.
On social media, but I haven't really I can't.
Tip number 2, and it's something you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure everybody knows where you are. So now I would used to do, because I'm old school, I would use the phone to actually call somebody, tell them where I was going to be, the person's name. And this is, like I said, I hate to say this is just when cell phones came out, but I would write the license plate number down and call my girlfriend with it.
Yeah.
Okay? And when I was at home, I would leave the person's name and anything I knew about them, address, phone number on my counter. God forbid anything happened. So you
do that.
What do you do?
People still do that. I used to do that before FaceTime was like a thing, or like before sharing a location was a thing. But now a lot of my friends, they do have Apple. I'm sure that there's other apps that you can do that with. But you know, most of my friends do have iPhones, and I'm able to share my location with them so they know where I am at all times. Even if I'm just walking on a street somewhere, they'll know exactly where I am.
Yeah, there's a lot of different apps out there. I follow my children, but you're only allowed so many people and they have to accept it. So share your location. I don't care if it's electronically or verbally. Make sure you share your location. The other thing too is make sure they know the person's name.
Yes.
Number.
So that is extremely important. Once you really start to talk to these people that you meet online, finding out their real name, because a lot of times they're using aliases.
I was just going to say, didn't you have that once?
Yeah. I'm like, so wait, Josh is not your real name? Oh, okay.
Just check. And what does he do for a living? Oh, you're a trash man. Sorry. I thought you said you were CEO.
Right. So like that's another thing. Sometimes they'll embellish on their job credentials. I've had that.
Who cares if it's a person? Seriously.
It doesn't matter about that. You know, just kind of be yourself, but you know, making sure you have their government name, at least their first. As long as you have a first name, here's what I do. Might be talking too much. But on these dating sites, you know, they always usually put their exact age, you know, if they're like 40, 45, 30, 33. Right. And then my next question is, so what's your sign? So I find out what month they're born in. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. You know, I'm a match with you. What's your actual date of birth? Yeah. So once I have their month and their date, and I know that they're 35 or 36, then I have a full date of birth and a first name. I can easily look them up.
Okay, I got another one for you, and I might be a little paranoid. I haven't had to do this because I haven't been dating in a long time, only because I choose not to. But Connecticut and many other states have a judicial website.
Yeah.
And I don't care who it is, get their first and last name and search them. And the reason I say that is I actually had a friend of mine who did not know it, who started dating somebody who was convicted of kidnapping and lawful imprisonment.
No way.
And I don't know how they say it, cruelty to animals. Convicted. So you got to be pretty bad that they didn't plead you out, right?
You're like borderline.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So we women mostly are much more resourceful when it comes to finding out as much information as we can. But here's what happens. When we get too enthusiastic about it, a lot of times we let our guard down. And that was what I was trying to say, that we can't do that. So check out your judicial website. You'll find out, and they have it usually broken down as criminal, family, really.
Absolutely.
Had a divorce. You found out about somebody, or somebody I know found out about somebody that actually had children with 3 women.
Right.
Just one.
It was horrible. I honestly thought that he just had one child with one woman. And it took me months to look him up. And because I said, you know what, I felt like he was being honest with me. And then some things started to kind of like not be so kosher.
Yeah.
I looked, and I did indeed find out that he had like 3 mothers in his life.
I had another friend of mine who was doing some online dating, and she had this guy's name. And she was the type of person that really hadn't dated in a long time. And she was kind of, I don't want to say the word desperate, but ladies, stop being so desperate and needy. Okay. And she kept meeting out with this guy, and he had a work van. And he would never take her to his apartment. And it was always, I remember her calling me up one time and saying we just sat in the parking lot in his van. Well, there's 2 reasons that happens, right? Either 1, they are married, or 2, they're homeless. Guess which this was?
He was married.
He was homeless.
Stop!
And in his car. So
Stop.
I hate to say, and I'll probably get shot down for saying this, and you guys can always comment, don't forget to, because I love to interact with the people that are watching.
Yeah.
People that are internet dating are not always the most desirable people that are out there. Now, you're out there. There's a lot of my friends that are out there, and they love it. They have a great time. I'm just saying be careful, because it's so easy to get scammed.
It really is. I had that army romance scam.
Oh, what was that? Tell us that, because you know what? This is something that's really popular. And people aren't realizing it. But go ahead. You were so into him.
I was. I thought he was like really cool. He talks to me about things that, other people on the site were not talking to me about, like family and what he was looking for.
Deployed, right?
Yes, he was deployed, which I should have thought about that. So if they're asking, so here's another thing. If they're saying to you, why don't you message me on an app, on WhatsApp? That's an international app.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you're on WhatsApp, it's for international chatting with people, like family members or whatever you use it for. And it didn't dawn on me at first. I just thought, oh, okay, no big deal. He says he's in the Army. He's overseas. He had a location here in New York, close to where I am. So like he was from New York or whatever, or he had 2 locations. His hometown was Florida, which was ideal because I'm originally from Florida. And he had a location of New York. I was like, okay, that's like an hour from me. No big deal. And we started chatting on WhatsApp. We were talking every day, very consistent. Then he started asking me for little bits and pieces of information that didn't seem like questions you would ask somebody. It didn't seem right. Yeah. Like, oh, can I have your address? I want to send you something. And he wouldn't tell me what it was, so things like that.
Now, paying attention. Brett, have you seen him face to face or just in texting?
It was just in texting. I requested photos of him outside of the photos that were online. He did send those. He requested photos of me as well. What I was doing. Yeah, he seemed like he had a genuine concern about, me. And then when I decided that I didn't want to give him the information that he asked for, he completely disappeared off of WhatsApp.
That's interesting. I
Yeah.
thought he asked you for money.
He didn't ask me for money. He wanted my address and some personal information about me so he can send me a box from Afghanistan, which
Seriously,
was
not really
weird.
in Afghanistan I can want.
Right. And he already knew my date of birth and he knew how old I was. And once he had my first name, once he
That's
had
it.
my address, yeah, he could do anything with that. So you have to be careful about identity theft when online dating as well.
One other thing that I think that people, when you go out on any date, whether it's internet dating or not, and you go on a date and you have your rescue phone call, you remember those? Call me up in 20, if I text you, call me up in 20 minutes and tell me you've been in a car accident, I have to come get you. You know those rescue phone calls?
I've never used them, but I should have. I should, but I've never used them.
I don't even know if it's, I mean, the guy's not stupid. He knows what he's doing, okay?
Yeah.
Having somebody available for your rescue phone call is always a good idea, I think.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
don't have people, and you're going to know which one I'm talking about, don't have your friends show up at a date and say, oh my God, I can't believe they just showed up here.
Yeah, that's horrible. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Or I usually always request to sit at the bar.
Yes.
And at some point, that person that I'm with will go to the bathroom or whatever, and I'll tell the bartender, hey, I'm on a first date with an online date. If I give you some sort of a code word, just want you to know that I'm not safe.
Yeah.
And they usually comply with that. It's fun for them. It's
Yeah.
kind of fun for you, and they're more attentive to your date too. You get better service. They're interested in what's going on. But it's really good for safety.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, the last question.
Yeah.
How many times do you communicate with a person before you give them your phone number? Like on the apps, like Bumble or whatever, you can message back and forth. How long before you give them your phone number and you start talking?
It varies. I'll be honest. It varies. It depends on how well the conversation is going and how it's flowing. If I don't really feel that there's a real flow with the conversation, it takes me longer to give you my number.
Okay.
But if we're clicking, then
Yeah.
I don't mind giving you my number to see where it goes.
Okay. I do know that if you utilize some of these websites and use their messaging service, it's actually safer only because people can monitor it.
Yes.
Once you go off the grid, you may have a bigger problem.
It's harder.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there is you're hoping for a point where you want to actually go and meet this person in public.
You do. You have to decide, when do you give them the number? When do you stop just the chit chat? And when do you just go for it?
Flag. I think you guys have to trust your instinct.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's one of the things we try to overlook it, or we're so needy, or we let it go.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. We have to trust that instinct. Be local. Make sure everybody knows where you are.
Yes.
Don't give out your information unless it's necessary. Now, I have had friends of mine get married from online dating.
Yes, I have as well. Yeah, it works.
Saying that it's a bad thing, it can work.
You have to have a plan.
You have to be on your A game. Yeah.
Absolutely, at all times, have a plan.
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciate this.
Yeah.
Britt and I are thinking of co-authoring a book to put even more of this down, because we got some more stories from other people.
You got some doozies. Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is, do not let them come to your house. Meet
Ever.
in public.
Yeah.
Meet in public.
Yes.
First few times.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Right.
I'm like a guru at this. I've been on, I can't tell you, countless first online dates.
Never get to a second.
No.
Very rarely.
Rare. Yeah.
Oh, Brittany, thank you so much. And everybody, just keep an eye out for the co-authored book. We're going to make it a comedy about shouldn't do when you're online dating, or even just some stories about what goes on. It'll blow your mind. And thank you. And remember, guys, this is Sharing Sunday. So if you guys ever have, I want you to make sure you subscribe, and any comments. And if you have anything you want to share, let me know and get in touch with me. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.